Hi, my name is Jesse, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set up your local environment to develop custom Next components. So these are the components that you can use inside configurable workspaces, and they're the ones that you can select inside UI Builder. Now there's a bunch of these components that ship with ServiceNow just out of box, but you can also develop your own, but it takes some extra work, some extra steps, and we'll go through those steps in this video. All right, so I've written a guide on my website, and I'll put the link in the description of this video, and I'll just be following the guide in this video because all the steps that you need to go through are in there. So starting off with the prerequisites, what we need is a ServiceNow instance to deploy our custom component onto, and we need admin privileges on the current machine, the local machine that you're working on. The first step is to install Visual Studio Code. Now, Visual Studio Code is a IDE, integrated development environment, so it's basically just a big set of tools for developers to develop stuff. And you can download it here. It's an awesome product made by Microsoft. It's available on all platforms, so you can just go here and download it. I've done so already, so I won't show you that process, but it should be fairly straightforward. And it looks more or less like this. Can zoom in a bit more. We've got these three panes. We've got a terminal, we've got our code here, and we've got our file explorer here. And then this terminal is also very useful for the subsequent steps in this tutorial because we can type in stuff here. And we'll need to be using a terminal in subsequent steps. Then step 2, install NVM. So we need to install Node.js, which is this JavaScript-based runtime environment, which allows a lot of other stuff that we need to happen. But we need version 14 for this to work, whereas the newest version is version 18. So we need an old version of Node. So instead of installing just that old version, it's better to install a tool called a Node Version Manager. And now Node Version Manager you can install on Mac through Brew, but there's instructions as well for how to do it on Windows, but I'll show you how to do it on Mac. So you can go to your terminal inside VS Code, and you can type in brew install nvm. So that actually brings us to the first snag in this process, at least for me. Is that brew install nvm. Brew install doesn't work on new Macs, so M1 and M2 Macs, this won't work. You need to preface that with something else to account for the new chip. And you can find that under step 8. You need to preface it with this, and there's a link there with some explanation why that is and how to set that up on your system. I'll skip over that for now, and I'll just jump to that preface. So inside VS Code, it looks like this. We'll install nvm. There we go, and then we can type in nvm version. It's not added to our shell, so let's do that. And now we should be able to access it. There we go, so it's working. So next we need to install Node version 14. So we do that like this, nvm install 14. And then we can check nvm use. I think it's already using 14, but we do this just in case. And then we can check the version, Node version 14. So first step is complete. Then step 3, download and install the ServiceNow CLI. So official documentation tells you to do this through the ServiceNow store. I tried that and it didn't work for me. I was throwing all kinds of weird errors. And so the way I got it to work is this. So we'll be using the Node runtime environment, which has a built-in package manager. So that's what this is, npm I, and I stands for install, G flag stands for global, and then we've got the ServiceNow CLI. So we can do that here as well and install that globally. All right, so the installation finished, but it gave me some red text here. Your Yo version is outdated. So it might, throughout this process, it might throw stuff at you that you need to fix. I did not see this the first time I did this, but it looks like we can just do this, install the latest version to resolve that problem. Okay, so that step also completed. We've installed the Yo. Now let's have a look at step 4. Install the UI component extension using the ServiceNow CLI. So there's this UI extension for the CLI that we need for scaffolding a new component and for shipping it or deploying it to an instance. So what we can do is we can just copy this code, go back to Visual Studio Code. Let's clear our screen to install this UI component extension. All right, so we installed the UI component extension successfully, as it says here. So we can move on to the next step. So let's test whether it's installed. Yes, so that works, so it should be installed. Now for step 5, installing the CLI Metadata application on your instance. This is an application that you install in your instance, and this allows the CLI to communicate properly with your instance and do some of the stuff that we needed to do, like deploying a component. So we need to visit the ServiceNow store and search for CLI Metadata. So let's do that. And then we can just type in CLI Meta, and here we have the CLI Metadata application. And in my case, there's no call to action because I've installed it on my instances already. I'm not sure why it says ready to install, but probably because it's ready to install on my instances. So you first need to select it here, and then on your instance, so let's go to my personal dev instance. And there it says system definition plugins, system definitions. You can just type in plugins. So it redirects you to all applications. Here we type in CLI Meta again. And then here you can install it. Because I've already installed it, it tells me here installed, but this is the place where you would install it. And that completes that step. So the next step is about setting up a connection profile. So these are the settings that you save within the CLI that allow it to know how to connect to your instance. The official docs mention a default profile as part of the instructions on how to get started with local development. This doesn't work for me, and I've also seen other people that report that it doesn't work. So a slight workaround is setting up a named profile. So you can do that with this command. So that's what we'll do now. You can do this in any directory. So the host is my personal dev instance. Authentic method is basic. The username is admin. Copy. Default output format JSON. Connecting. Boom. Connected and profile has been saved. All right, for the next step, we're actually going to set up a new project. So for this, we need to open a new folder and start fresh somewhere. Something like this. Let's make sure we have the terminal available. And then we can invoke this command. We're going to change some settings. So profile, so the profile we set up was new profile. Name, my organization is Jesse, and the component is called crazy new component. Description, a crazy new component. Let's see if that works. All right, so the scaffolding completed. We did get a warning about not being able to validate the instance. I don't think this is a big deal. It's just a question of whether that stats.do resource is set to public or not. In my case, it's not. I think that's the default, so I think that's safe to ignore. But what we see here is that it's created all the files that we need, our basic component, and it's also created, okay, so VS Code is complaining about something as well. It's also created the Now UI, and here we have all the information pertaining to our component. And this one is also useful to rename, because this is how it shows up inside UI Builder. So let's call it the crazy component, and we can save it. So this has one step that's left, which is npm install. So we've scaffolded the component, but we still need to install the dependencies. All right, so while I was installing the components, it failed, and it has this error with npm gip. So if you go to my guide, there's actually step 8, which talks about a bunch of the different issues that you might face. So here, I think we need to do these steps, because this is an issue with Python. Okay, so it's already installed. Continue. Just going to reinstall it. Okay, that one finished. Now let's set the global Python environment. Set the paths. And let's try again. Okay, so that completed. It appears as if that worked, which means you might not even need to do this. This might just be enough. And in the case if you're not on an M1, you can do something like this. For Windows, obviously it's going to be different, but since I'm on a Mac and this video is focused on the Mac. All right, so there's a slight mislabeling of the headers here, but the next step is to run the component locally. So what we'll do is actually, let's make a change to the component. Need to see here, where is the component? Here we go. So currently there's nothing there. But let's put something there, and then let's run the component locally. Give that a second to run. Not quite sure where it should be running or if it worked. So I'm just gonna run it again. That looks a bit better. Callback was already called. Let's try again. So I'm running into an issue, but this is actually good to show you guys because let me show you what happens first. Callback was already called, is what it says. Now it turns out more people have this, and then the advice seems to be to remove node modules. So let's do that, and then run npm install again. So let's see if that fixed things. So let's run the same command again. No, that did not work. So let's check. Let's try reinstalling Node. Alright, so now let's try again. SNC. Also doesn't work. Let's try removing node modules again. Alright, so finished npm install again. So let's try SNC UI component develop again. That looks better. Okay, so that looks correct. I think it's important to show these intermediate steps because somehow that's how it works. And here we have craziness. And then the cool thing is if we update this too, it should update this automatically. There we go. All right, so now for the last step, we want to deploy the component to our instance. And so we can do that with SNC UI component deploy. So let's move back to VS Code. I'm going to open a new terminal so that this server keeps on running. SNC UI component deploy. That's that instant version warning again. Alright, so with the component deployed to our instance, all that we need to do is go to UI Builder. We go to, for instance, I'm going to a test experience, and then I can add a component here, and I can type in crazy, and there it is. We've got our custom component, save it. And I can open it and view it from the client side, and there we have our craziness.